giving our best and our all to God. So as human beings, we try to give our best with everything we do, whether it's for school or for work. So when we take a test, like we're not gonna halfway study and then try to get at least a C. We're gonna try to get an A and study like day and night to get that A. When we want to give the best, we want to give the best qualities so others can think fond of us. But we want to always, as Christians, the most important thing we do is to focus on giving our best to God. So I like to turn our attention to 1 Kings chapter 8, verses 20 through 27, and I could read that. So the Lord has fulfilled his word which he had spoke, and I have filled the position of my father David, and sit on the throne of Israel, as the Lord promised, and I have built a temple for the name of the Lord God of Israel. And there I have made a place for the ark, and which is the covenant of the Lord which he had made with our fathers, when he brought them out of the land of Egypt. Then Solomon stood before the altar of the Lord in the presence of all the assembly of Israel, and spread out his hands toward the heaven. And he said, Lord God of Israel, there is no God in heaven above or on earth below that is like you, who keep your covenant and your mercy with your servants who walk before you with all their hearts. You have kept what you have promised your servant David, my father. You have both spoken with your mouth and fulfilled it with your hands, as it is this day. Therefore, Lord God of Israel, now keep what you have promised your servant David, my father, saying, You shall not fail to have a man sit before me on the throne of Israel. Only to your sons heed on their way, that they walk before me as you have walked before me. Now I pray, O God of Israel, let your word come true, which you have spoken to your servant David my father. But will God indeed dwell on earth? Behold, heaven and the heaven of heavens cannot contain you. How much less this temple which I have built? So as we see here, we see Solomon's prayer for the temple, and we can see that Solomon was one of the richest kings that we know, and we're learning this in Sunday school about Solomon and his past and his history. So we know that Solomon was one of the richest kings. So he wanted to build a temple for God. So he did not just do the bare minimum and just all the things that he could just find, but he wanted to build that temple with all the finest things, all the finest gold, all the finest workers that he wanted, and he wanted God to like that. But as we see in verse 27, he says that this temple cannot even contain him, because all the things that Solomon has given for God is still nothing towards God. So as we look in John 3:16, can someone please read that? It's a familiar verse to all of us.
Hallelujah, glory, 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 glory. John 3:16.
For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life.
So as we see here, God gave his best for us. He gave his only begotten Son for us. So what do we have to give to God? But we can only control ourselves, and we cannot control others, but we have to always give our best to God. When we one day stand before him in his presence, he's not going to judge us for our worldly accounts, but for our spiritual accomplishments. Whether it's spending more time in his presence and giving our all to him in church, no matter what it is or what we do, we want to do and give our best to God. Since we are Christians, no matter what it is in our lives, either in work, school, or at church, we should do our best for God. As it says in Colossians 3:23, and whatsoever you do, do it heartily, as the Lord and not to men. In order to give our best to God, it must come from the inside. It must come from the inside of our soul. So if we give God our all, and no matter what we do, it will last for eternity. In conclusion, I like to read Romans 5, verses 6 through 8.
Amen. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Praise the
It says,
Lord.
For when we still without strength in due time, Christ died for the ungodly. For the sake of a righteous man will one die, but yet perhaps for a good man someone would even dare to die. But God demonstrates his love toward us, in that that while we were sinners, Christ died for us. So I like to leave off with the question, are we really giving our best towards God? Thank you.